Yo, what's up, guys? So today we're talking about names and specifically whose name are we living for? Today we're talking about Genesis chapter 11 and 12, and there's some big stuff that happens during those chapters, but also some little stuff that we want to dig into. So let's talk about it. So in Genesis chapter 11, humans who were supposed to have been spreading out across the whole world decide, no, we're not going to do what God says. We're actually going to do our own thing and try to make a name for ourselves. What they actually say in the Bible is that, and they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad all over the face of the earth." So immediately we see humans coming to basically ignore everything that God said. I think they have some fear about what happened prior to chapter 11, which was the destroying of the world via the flood. And unfortunately, because of that, they're like, nah, we're going to just do our own thing. We don't want to be at the will of God, so we're going to just try to do our own thing and make a name for ourselves. And immediately that just shows us our frailty and how evil we actually are in heart. The fear that they have, or I guess they use to justify what they were doing, is that they were afraid of being scattered. They didn't want to lose and they didn't want to be forgotten, because we have this innate desire to be known as humans. And it's probably something that comes from our state that God made us originally prior to sin. But because we're sinners, every desire that we have is corrupted and evil. Every single thing. And to be honest, today we choose the same exact thing. We chose to build towers in our own life, whether that's success through your career, through money, through whatever it is. You build a tower and you don't do what God says because you want to glorify your own name and not God's. And what that is just us putting ourselves in the place of God as ruler and judge. And really, the humans at this time, they might have actually been trying to usurp God's position as leader because they said they wanted to put the tower in the heavens. Like they want to try to access God in some way, which is dumb. And we don't know exactly everything they were doing, but we know that what they were doing was clearly sinful because God goes down and sees, he's like, yo, if we let them do this, they are going to do anything, and not just anything that's good. Everything that they're going to do if they work together like this is going to be sinful, and they're going to try to destroy the world and to put themselves in control. And God was like, I'm not trying to have them do that. I'm trying to help them. So he scatters them and he changes their languages so that they can't work together, which ultimately leads them to do what God told them to do in the first place. See how his judgment leads us to where he wants us to go anyway. I think that happens in our lives too. Like God puts things in our path that are judgment, but it still leads us with grace. Because of grace, it still leads us where he wants us to go, which I love. Because God could have wiped the earth off again right then and there, but he didn't. He had grace and he let them keep going. And it's not that he stopped them because he was mad. He's trying to protect them, and he was trying to protect them, and he's trying to protect us. So if God ever stops you in your tracks for something, it's not because he's mad at you or because he wants to be some vengeful dictator God, but no, he loves you enough to protect you from something that you don't know what's going to happen, and also protect you from your own evil desires. Like I said before, you are an evil person. Like we don't even know how drenched in evil and sinful our flesh is, but God knows, and he's trying to save us from ourselves. So the question again is, am I living for my own name, or am I going to live for God in his name? Which takes us to I think the end of chapter 11 or the beginning of chapter 12. Let's see. Right. Okay. So the end of chapter 11 goes into a genealogy. After the Tower of Babel happens, it takes us into a genealogy, which just talks about or shows God's grace. He's so merciful that even though he could have destroyed us again during the Tower of Babel, he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose somebody that is just out in the world, and I'm going to allow for him to have a name. God says to Abraham, go to the land of the Canaanites, and I'm going to give you a name. There's a contrast between those two things, between us humans trying to get our own name and God establishing our name. God tells Abram in Genesis chapter 12, I will make your name great. And it's not, and that name isn't a name built on pride or human frailty or something that we've done, but no, it's built off a promise. It's built off of God's own name, his own love for us. It's a name not to bring glory to Abram, but it's a name that's going to bring glory to God, that's going to bless him, and it's going to bless the world. We try to establish our own name that honors ourselves. It doesn't help anyone. It honestly is selfish and ultimately sometimes hurts people. But God's blessing, God establishing your name, when God establishes your name, it doesn't just bless you, but it blesses the rest of the world. It blesses the people around you. We're a couple seconds through the video, or minutes through the video. I don't know where I put this. But could you like the video, subscribe, and comment something that you got from the video if it was helpful? And yeah, let's talk. But when God honors you and God is the one who's establishing your name, then everyone else around you can get blessed, which is exactly what happened with Abraham and eventually through us because of Jesus. God's plan of redemption started back in the garden, but it's continuing even through the flood, even through the Tower of Babel. God is being gracious, and he is picking out a specific group that would not look for their own name, but look for God's name. But yeah, look, so Abraham listens to God. Okay, he decides he's going to honor God's name, and he's going to listen to what God says, and he's going to go to the land that he doesn't know. Okay, the land of the Canaanites. And he's going to live there because God's going to give him that land, and he's going to have so many blessings and children and all that stuff, right? But even when Abraham responded in faith, there was still faultiness in his life because he's a sinner. But even after responding in faith, Abraham's humanity still shows. His famine hits, and instead of trusting God in it and trusting that God is going to protect him like he said he would, he decides, I'm going to run to Egypt. We do that a lot. We decide we're not going to trust God. We're just going to run to where we think provision is, where we think we try to solve the issue when God literally is God, and he's saying prior, in this case to Abraham, and also probably in your own life, that he's saying, I got you, just trust me. But no, Abraham still goes to Egypt, and he's scared for his life because he can't control what happens to him, clearly, even though he thinks he can. And he tells his wife Sarah to lie, putting her in danger and putting himself in sin. Our decisions make other people sin. When we're so concerned about ourselves, our decisions turn other people around us to sin. And it also hurts us, and it's going to hurt other people around us. Why? Because he felt like he had to take control, even though God promised that he would keep him. And God is sovereign. But our own evil desires, our own sinful heart turns us away from God so many times. Just from tiny little decisions like this. Sin doesn't just stay singular. It always spreads. It always gets bigger. And because of what Abraham did, Pharaoh and the Egyptians get a plague. It's funny, God he doesn't hurt, but God sends a plague on Pharaoh and the Egyptians because of something that Abraham did. And Pharaoh's like, look, y'all got to go. Get out of here. Because clearly something is wrong and you messed us up here. So you caused me to sin, or you caused this whole issue, so y'all need to leave. And look at that. When our own decisions don't end up working out, God still pushes us back to where he wanted us to go, like I said earlier. He thought he should have been in Egypt. He goes to Egypt, messes up, and those sins take him right back where God had him in the first place. It's just like you're like, well, I'm going to take this way. Actually, nope, I'm going to take this way back, all the way back to where God had me. So why don't we just stay where God had us in the first place instead of going to Egypt? I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand because I do it too. And I'm not just saying like, Abraham, what's wrong with you? I mean, Abram, what's wrong with you? Because it's me too, and it's you too. We just do these things over and over again that make God have to redirect us over and over and over and over until we would just, why wouldn't we just walk on the path that he has for us rather than trying to get redirected all the time? I don't know. But yet still God is merciful, and he still allows us to mess up. Not that we're supposed to, but he allows the mess ups. He doesn't want us to do it. I'm not saying that God says, "Hey, just go ahead and sin." He he helps us to not do it and tells us to not do it, but yet we still do it. But he allows us just to mess up, to see the frailty, our own frailty, so that he could show us that only he could be the one to help us, to save us, to keep us. Anyway, God redirects Abraham and he sends him back to where he needs to go. And that's like the 2 chapters. That's honestly it. But those 2 chapters show us like what happens when you're living for yourself, when you're living for your own name. For the people in the Tower of Babel situation, they're living for their own name. They literally said it, like they want to make a name for themselves because they want to be in control of everything and their destiny. And that is also us. We decide to make our own lives, our own paths, because we don't trust God. And ultimately, we just don't believe in him. So we try to do our own thing. And it always is going to get us messed up. And it's always going to lead to sin. And God knows that. God knows it's going to lead to our own destruction. So he prevents us from doing it sometimes and protects us by also judging us and not judging us like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. But like God can do that, yes. But I'm saying like gives judgment and stops us in our tracks. But then also God sometimes just allows us to do the dumb thing. And then we see that our decision was dumb and we turn right back to God. Another thing that we do by trying to take control of our own life is by trying to get out of situations ourselves. When we're in famine, we try to go do it ourselves and be like, all right, well, I'm going to go here and do this. When in reality, God wants us just to rely on him because he is God. And it's an encouragement because I know God is God and he will save me and keep me, and he ultimately did. The whole story of the Bible, these 2 stories, shows that God still had a plan from the beginning, that he wasn't going to just throw us away, but that he gave us grace and mercy, ultimately through Abraham, through Noah, through Shem, through Abraham, Abram at the time, and all the way down we get Jesus, who is the redemption of our relationship with God. He clears us from that sin, this fleshly evil sin that we live in. He saves us from it so that we don't have to pay for our penalties. We don't have to pay the penalty of our sin. And I mean, it's an encouragement, but I would say you got to start living for God and live for the ultimate name, the best name, which is Jesus. Live for that name. Give your life to Jesus. And I know you probably are a believer if you're watching this. If you're not, give your life to Jesus. That's the name you want to glorify. And everything else around you might end up working out, but life is better with Jesus. I don't know. This is kind of a yap session, but to be short, live for God. Live for Jesus. Your life will be that much better. I guarantee it. It's the best decision you could ever make. Jesus is the only name that saves. It's the one and only name that actually lasts. And it's the only one that's worth building your life on. Yep. So, in the best way you can, let God take control of your life and not control your own life. Honor God. I love you. Anyway, build your name on Jesus. Bye.